Hey, so I got two comments yesterday that had like little asides in them, just kind of like a little comment on their own commentary, and they both stood out to me. And I wanted to make a video about this. I'm sure I've made other videos about this, but it's time to hear it again. And the main idea that I want to convey is that you don't have everything you want right now. Everything isn't changed the way you would like it to be. You're not where you want to be mentally, but you're good where you are right now. Like, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. It can't be any other way. You might have impatience for wanting things to change faster. You might have self-judgment about how well you're doing, how well you assess that you're doing, but you're good where you are right now. And so the two comments that were made were, one person said, I imagine the things I want and I actually feel afraid of them happening, which is like ridiculous. So there was like, not to like nitpick it, but there's like, there's like a judgment on that, putting on that, like, it's so dumb that I'm afraid of the things I want. It's not dumb at all. It's not dumb at all. And the other comment was, I've done a lot of mental changing, but really nothing in the outer has changed at all, which is and I think there was also a comment on that, or like a sort of like a little judgment on that also, like, I don't recall, but it was just like, I've done all this stuff, but like nothing's changed. So, one of the things that I think is true about a lot of this stuff is that it's like you keep building and building and building and building and building. And at some point, the dam has no choice but to break, and things have no choice but to change. And that, sitting through that period of time, which both of these, it kind of sounds like both of these people are in to one degree or another. It can be difficult sitting through that time, that period of time when you don't feel like any motion, any forward motion is happening despite your best efforts. Things are happening. Things are rearranging in your mind. You are having experiences every day through your changed mentality. I guess this is more of a response to the person who said that they have changed a lot of things mentally, but nothing in the outer is changing. Sometimes you can change a lot of things mentally, and for whatever reason, you're just not ready to participate. You're not ready to play your role in the thing that will change everything, like in the outer, because there's a deep fear of change for most people. There's a deep fear of letting go of the unknown for most people. We can clearly see this demonstrated in people that stay in abusive relationships, or like, how, this is sad, I don't even want to say this, but like kids that, have an abusive parent and they cling to them because they're known, if like CPS comes to take them away or whatever, they freak out because they don't want to leave the known, even if the known is terrible, even if the known is 90%, soul-crushing garbage and 10% shreds of, something positive. This is just a human thing. And so I think, acknowledging that and just kind of letting it be and understanding that is the way it is, and that is part of what's driving you. Like sometimes just recognizing something and letting it be allows it to just go. Something like that alone is a mental shift, and mental shifts are what cause all, changes to happen. So like if you find yourself in that position, where you really feel like you have changed mentally, you're like, yeah, I'm not the same person that I was when this whole thing started, but I'm still working at the job that doesn't really pay the bills enough. Sorry, there's a dumpster being emptied not far from me right now. I'm still not, I'm still in a relationship I don't want to be in. I'm still single. I haven't really, like, that spark isn't in me to like actually draw me to wanting to have like a new beginning with somebody or whatever. If you find yourself in that position, just let it be. And, you can always intend for things to aid you. Like, you can say, it'd be really great if I saw something soon that gave me another little bit of a mental shift in this direction. Or you could say, oh man, I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of things changing really fast. Like, I recognize that that's a big part of what's holding me back. So it'd be really nice if I got some small changes, like some things improved, maybe not incredibly, but it'd be nice if I could move slightly outside of this place where I am, so that I could look back in a year and say, okay, I haven't come that far, but this thing is better. Like, this was a problem. This thing was kind of a minor problem. Like, I was always behind on this bill, like always. Like, my electric bill was always 2 months behind. And now it's not. Like, that has, I have a little more money, whatever, for whatever reason. That has changed. Like, my situation has improved a little bit. You can always, if you can recognize, now that I know that the people commenting on this channel are so, like, self-aware and probably thinking about stuff a lot more than maybe I thought. I don't know what I thought. I didn't know. I didn't really know until everybody commented who was watching this. But, like, I think that this is probably, like, I think the people watching this channel are really probably capable of, like, working with themselves more so than the average person who's walking around asleep all the time, which sadly, I mean, it's shocking the number of people who really, I don't think, really deeply think about it. They don't go too far beyond the surface explanations for why things are happening. It's a lot of people, but that number is shrinking, I think. So interesting things on the horizon for humanity, I think. But yeah, if you're finding yourself in the position, or like the other commenter who was saying, like, I don't even want to I think the same person was saying, somebody said, it's like, it's really difficult to imagine the thing you want without the things that are currently stopping you from pursuing it or getting it, like, coming into the picture. And I totally relate to that. Like, I don't spend a lot of time, like, visualizing or imagining things, but sometimes in the past, like prior to the last 5 years, like in the olden days for me, I would try to just imagine, like, what would the ideal thing for me feel like? Like, I just would like to experience it. And then I would try to do that, and, like, all of my hangups about everything would enter the fantasy or whatever and just kind of ruin it. And I couldn't seem to let that go. And it was Neville Goddard that got me over that hump, honestly. I don't really, like I said, I don't really do that much with anything. I mostly just intend to do things, and then, my conscious waking hours, I just process everything. I keep the intention in the forefront, and then I process everything that happens through that intention. Like, how can this be used to, shift me more in that direction? Like, how am I looking? Like, what's the old way I'm looking at whatever this thing is that just came up? And I don't do this, like, actually, literally, like how I'm saying it. This is just sort of how the mental process naturally plays out. Like, how am I looking at this from the old perspective, and how would I look at this from the new perspective? Or, how could this event that just happened that I don't like or that seems negative actually be a part of things that could change me in the direction I'm trying to change in, which really takes the edge off of stuff that happens. And it clearly serves a functional purpose, because little by little, over time, these, life things that just happen every day, all day, they change you a little bit at a time if you're constantly doing that, I think. That's at least been my experience. But, so to the person who was saying, I can barely even imagine the things that I want because I'm so, like, I feel so much fear about them happening. That could just be this sort of, like, innate fear of change that I think most people have. But also, this is another thing that I don't think has been, like, a popular thing to say to people who are, like, pretty hardcore manifesting people. If you feel afraid of the things you want, there might be a good reason for that. you know what I mean? Like, you're probably very in tune with your own reactions to things and how you've handled similar things, like similar big changes in the past. And, you might have some reservations that are not just something that needs to be like ignored. Sometimes, all the time, I think, if you have a fear about something, that's something that if you worked through it and changed your mind about it, then you would legitimately no longer be afraid of it. And then that fear wouldn't exist, and it wouldn't be there when you imagine these things. So, like, to just ignore those things, I think there's probably a low hit rate of that being successful, of just like completely abandoning your previous personality. I mean, I don't know. I think like probably most people aren't really willing to do that. And so you've got to find a workaround, like all these little things that you would do to work through it yourself. So, what's your fear? Like, what's your fear of this desire manifesting? Like, say you want a great relationship. When you think about that, is your fear that I'm not going to be good enough for that? I'm not going to be able to maintain that because I have like emotional issues that I haven't worked out, or, I'm not stable enough, like in my own self right now, that if I met somebody and fell madly in love, that if they left me, I wouldn't be completely devastated, or like, yourself and where you're at. So if you have those kinds of fears, like the imaginal stuff is already like helping you. It's already illuminating for you the things about yourself, nothing and no one to change but self, the things about yourself that are, where the attention and intention should go. So I don't think it's ridiculous at all to notice that you have fears when you're trying to imagine something manifesting. The message in the manifesting community is so, what's the word that means overly simplified and just like kind of stupid. Appeals to the lowest common denominator for money. Yeah. I don't, I need to reread Neville again. So much of this stuff comes from people talking about Neville Goddard's works in kind of a surface way. My assertion has always been that when you imagine something happening, when you imagine you have an imaginal scene for like the end after something's already happened, you've already gotten the thing you want. If it's something that requires a big change in you to be able to manifest or sustain, that change is coming. Like, you're not just going to, wake up in this scene one day without any of that stuff having happened. Like, it's not like imagining a scene, impressing the subconscious, then makes, a square peg fit into a round hole. It just doesn't work that way, as far as I can tell. You may have a streamlined path through whatever changing you need to do in order to be able to sustain that. Imagining that end scene may provide something like that. Like I don't know the mechanics of that, so I can't really speak to that. But like this idea that, let's say you're a person who has been in relationships in the past. And let's just say, obviously I'm not saying this about anybody who commented anything. There's no connection between this and that. Let's say you're somebody who's been in a relationship with somebody who really treated you well and loved you, and you were the person that had all kinds of, emotional issues in that relationship, treated them poorly, maybe you abused them, maybe you Maybe you know, weren't there when you should have been, or were, you know, I don't know. Let's just say you're like the offending party, and you know that this is how you've shown up in relationships in the past. If you imagine yourself happily married to somebody, and you like feel that happy state, I think a lot of people think that means a person will show up that somehow fixes all those things about me. I don't think that's what is happening. I think if you truly want that thing and you intend for it and you feel yourself in that situation, it's like telling your psyche, here's the GPS point at some point in the future. Take me through everything that I need to go through, the bridge of incidents, to put me in that scene. And in your case, if that's the case, you're probably going to go through maybe another relationship in the meantime, or more relationships in the meantime. You're probably going to go through some therapy, some, stuff like that, that's going to resolve those things that are causing that outward behavior. Because things like that are not surface, they're deep. They come from somewhere, and they will continue to come from somewhere until that deep down somewhere has shifted. And like, that is what this is all about. That is what nothing and no one to change but self is. If you, as Neville Goddard says, if you assume the state, or you assume a new identity, meaning you say, right now, my life is trash, I'm going to start believing and acting as though, and thinking from, as much as I can, the state of a successful person. If you do that stuff, those things are going to come about naturally. Like those, you will be led, you will come to the obvious conclusion. There are things that I need to change. There are things that I need to fix. There are, beliefs I have that need to be changed, which is pretty much the core of everything. And that's how that will happen. So all of that to say, if you're thinking of your desired outcome, and you feel very afraid of that happening right now, there's probably a very good reason for that. And it's because you know that mentally you're not the person that sustains that external reality that you want. And so just recognize that. I don't think it's absurd at all. It makes perfect sense. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't manifest that, but you should understand that there's no reason to be afraid of that thing manifesting, because it can only manifest if you are a match for it. It can only manifest and stay in your reality if you are the person for whom having that thing is natural. That's Neville Goddard, I think, in a nutshell. That's manifesting. That's the world is your mirror. The world is your reflection. As above, so below. That's what that means. So don't have any fear in the end manifestation. Just try to have courage about what you will have to go through in order to get that thing. And just have courage about the personal growth you will experience and some of the things you might have to face up to. The unexamined life is not worth living, as a wise man once said. So I think, I don't want to be like, this is what life's about, or this is what people are here for. I don't know that that's the case. I know it's true for me that the purpose of this life for me was to do exactly what I just said. It's to continue to personally evolve. Because honestly, it's not like, I don't know, that's not like some spiritual imperative for me. It's just because I want to access all the things that the higher levels of consciousness have access to, and I want to experience, the moment to moment of my life, happier and more peaceful. Like, it's selfish, really. It's not like, some, you know what I mean? This whole self-development thing isn't just some woo thing for me. It's selfish. There's a reason I want to access things I don't have access to. I want to experience things in a different way, in a way that I can't experience them if some block is in the way or whatever. So I don't know. I think you just have to have courage, really. That's what it comes down to. It comes down to courage. and a certain amount of faith that like you're not going to get saddled with something that you can't handle. So yeah, I definitely would not judge yourself for feeling fear about the things that you want happening. And I definitely would not judge yourself for feeling like you've made some serious mental changes, but that there's not a lot to show for it in the outer reality yet. The thing that I liked, I think this was in The Secret, which was based on the science of getting rich, which the audio and commentary are below and free. And I'm not selling anything ever on this channel, other than maybe a book on Amazon. But I will, unless somebody compellingly gives me a reason why I must charge money for my book, I can't see why I would ever not just like give a PDF of it away to anybody who wanted it. But anyway, in The Secret, I think somebody said in The Secret that, you know, yeah, it was the guy who had the sweat hut who somebody died in. I don't remember his name. But that guy said, you know, bamboo grows and grows and grows for like years underneath the ground. And then it sprouts forth and grows just like a huge amount in a short period of time. And I can say for sure from my own life that's a great metaphor. Is that a metaphor? That's a great analogy. Is that an analogy? Look, that's a great mental picture to have in mind, because like that is often, I think, how things happen. Like there's a whole lot of internal changing that happens, you know, if you're paying attention to it, if you're like, you know, I think, yeah, if you're like on that intentional path, then a lot will happen in like your 20s and 30s. I'm only in my mid 40s, so I can't speak beyond that, but there definitely seemed to be a point at which a lot of things came together and there was a lot of outer motion. Like around like my late 30s, 38-ish, that's where like my business really took off. That's where I was able to finally do something with like my weight. That was always like a thing for me. And I was finally able to intentionally do something with that. I was just sort of like paralyzed in that area. But at 38, I was like, oh, I actually have control over this. And it's like the second that got through my head, I just like did something about it. I just like went on a diet and started exercising and lost like 70 pounds. So that happened then. And then, you know, when I was 40, I had like some major revelations about early childhood things that changed everything about the way I was looking at relationships. So just like all this stuff happened in this few-year period. Whereas prior to that, it was just like nothing, a little bit. And then like some years of stagnation in there too, where it's like, okay, well, nothing's changed, you know, I'm kind of like stuck, I'm plateauing on everything in my life. And then, you know, it's been like pretty astronomical since then. So yeah, I mean, I think if you sort of keep at it, you really shouldn't worry about nothing's ever going to happen here. It has to. There'll be a tipping point. There will be a mental shift, or a thought, or a person that shows up and helps you, or, you know, gives you some wisdom that you need or something. And you'll just be ready and you'll just do it. You'll be ready and you'll just take off. You won't be searching anymore. You'll just know and you'll just go. And so I just wanted to make this video to respond to those two people with what I just said. And I'll say it again. I think like a lot of this stuff really takes a lot of courage. And if you don't feel like you're a very courageous person, I would intend for that to start to be a thing for you. I would, if it were me, I would say, I know that I'm not somebody who has approached life very courageously in the past, but I know I have the capacity for that. And I would really like for that to start to be active in the moments where I'm faced with that, you know, a mental decision that where one is kind of like, you know, the way I've always defaulted to reacting or whatever, And then there's the option to be courageous and think about something differently and, not go down the road of negative thinking or, in those moments, I want to start, taking the courageous option. Like, just think about that stuff for a minute and you'll be aware of it at the right time in the future. That's what I would say. So I hope that helped somebody. I think I might, it's 8:11. I think I might make an ACIM video, since everybody in the comments for the most part seemed to like those. I will give a warning at the beginning for Emperor James and anybody else who just is not into the ACIM, so you can just click right off and go about your day without having to hear about the Holy Spirit, God's plan, salvation, and other such distasteful terms to you, me also. But anyway, that's all. Have a great day.